This is an Irish independent podcast.
Saying to me, look, sorry, the studio's on 2, you're on 3. I was like, that's no big deal. Now I'm like, I have to walk down a flight of stairs. Can I get everyone in my cans, please, Paul? Thank you. I'm ready whenever everyone's ready.
All good, yeah.
Here we go. Hey, everybody. Sit back, relax. You're in the warm embrace, the bosom of Bits and Bobs. It's nice to be here. Joe is here. We have Conan. Conan, hi.
Hi, Joe. My favourite time of the week.
Same. And you're also, everybody, in the bosom of Ronan Mullen. Hello.
Hi, everyone. What?
Just letting that sit there.
He was just trying something.
I'm not sure it worked, but I was trying something. Already today, we've had a busy day. Today's Thursday, yes? Thursday. We have spoken to the brilliant Jenny Gow, who we're going to hold off playing until next week, if that's okay, F1 fans. Jenny has been working in F1 for about 15 years now. She's with the BBC. You will recognise her from Drive to Survive on Netflix as well. She's covered over 200 Grand Prix. And she's written a book about Formula One, which we talk a little bit about and get her thoughts on the sport, which is interesting for sure. But also maybe a bit more dramatically, 2 years ago, at the age of 44, in perfect health, she had a stroke. So it was all incredibly sudden. And, you know, you go through life, and if you were to stop at any moment and think of all the things that could go wrong, you'd freak out. You know, there are things that could go wrong that you wouldn't even consider. Jenny Gow was in perfect health, and she had some kind of virus or cold, and she was coughing quite a bit. And the coughing caused a slight tear in a blood vessel in the neck, and this led to a stroke.
And obviously she had said to you at one stage during the interview that you'd stopped. Obviously you're struck down with a crash, but she was like, this makes me very nervous when somebody coughs now as well. So even something as simple as that you would never even think about, it sort of impacted her now as well. Completely.
And so husband finds her in the bathroom. Her 6-year-old is propping her head up in a pillow. Ambulance are called. And terrible for anyone, but I was going to say, in particular for a broadcaster, she cannot talk afterwards. Jenny Gow loses her speech and has had to fight. And as you'll hear in the interview next week, is still very much fighting to get her speech back. Although I thought her diction and her voice sounded fantastic, you know. But then there was a moment in the interview where she gave us an example of how it wasn't so easy for her when she couldn't think of a word or get a word out. And we talk a bit about that. So that's coming next week with Jenny Gow of the BBC. And then there will be some rugby later on with Eddie O'Sullivan and the Irish Independent's Keane Tracy, all thanks to Energia. Of course, our coverage of the autumn series on Indosport is brought to you by Energia. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels. And energia.ie/rugby is where you can go to get more details on their rugby partnerships and more. Some exclusive home energy offers for rugby fans as well. Will I get to some emails? Anything anybody wants to say? Are we pushing on?
No, I want to get into this mailbag.
You've called this a mailbag edition, which is, it's not quite. We have other things to talk about, but we've neglected emails this week. Quite a few rugby ones.
As is your want.
Nah, doing rugby later on. So Mikey Moriarty was in touch. Now, even Mikey at the end says, try and get through this essay. People, when they start writing an email.
And they apologise for the length of it and continue on. But appreciate it, Mikey. Sorry, I appreciate the time that you've taken to write a lovely email.
Apparently you write an email past 3 paragraphs, no one reads it.
I'm a big bullet point man because I just don't give people the benefit of the doubt that they're going to read it all.
Yeah. It's the same with CVs. Apparently everyone's boiling them down to 1 page now. I'm like, if you're not going to read past page 1, I don't want to work for you anyway.
Quite a lot of them are being done, though, with AI. They're scanning them first. Have you heard of this?
No.
So I was talking to somebody that applied for a job at one of the tech companies, and person did not even get a call back. And he was telling me that, he subsequently got a job there. But he was saying that someone gave him advice. Oh, they're scanning them all now. I don't know if it's with AI, but with some kind of computerized system. And so they said, listen, your CV is actually fine, but you just need to change it all into like percentages of improvement. So i.e., if I was applying for a job, it couldn't be, interviews, analysis, that kind. It has to be like Indosport went up from 20% in week 1 to 48% week 2.
Wow.
And so numbers. And so he adjusted his CV, which was the same career, with lots of, I increased this by 40%, I increased this. And he got the call back, got the interview, got the job.
That's really interesting.
It actually is. It's a great tip.
It's grim, but it's interesting.
So grim. To Mikey's email, it was refreshing to hear Rory and Ian on your podcast on Monday finally begin to criticise Andy Farrell's team selection. Like, finally, like, Andy Farrell's lost one game.
Yeah.
They won the Six Nations this year.
It's about time. He's had it coming for a while.
I think we've lost it, actually. I think Irish fans, rugby fans, have lost the plot. We're becoming
Spoiled
as hell.
Gluttonous.
Colin upstairs in the canteen said, because he said, what are you talking about today? And I said, a lot of emails in about the rugby. He said, yeah, we've become a bit like Kerry.
Oh, have we?
He's a Galway man. But I just, like, okay, Mikey, listen, we enjoy the email, but I mean, like, finally begin to criticise Andy Farrell's team selection. Would you not say his team selection has been pretty good for, the entirety of his tenure? He says, it feels to me like late era Joe Schmidt, where it's harder to get off the squad than on it. Okay, I think Osborne in South Africa might care to disagree, but we'll push on. He says, the farce of Cian Healy collecting 2 and 3 minute caps to finally surpass Brian O'Driscoll is a pathetic sideshow. Nothing to be gained from an Irish perspective from these appearances. It's encouraging to see Tom Clarkson on the bench along with Casey and Prendergast. It strikes me there are loads of players that are due consideration for Test rugby but never get it. And then he lists off the provinces. At Munster, Tom Ahern, Hodnett, Coombs, Tom Farrell. Connacht, he says, Jack Ainger, Matthew Devine, Ben Murphy, Carl Ford. Ulster, Scott Wilson, Dave McCann, Nathan Doak, Balakoon, Mike Lowry. If he were French, the likes of Edwin Adogbo would have a couple of summer caps to his name already, injury notwithstanding. I need not highlight the Leinster players because they get picked anyway.
Drive by.
We're beginning to dull the potential of our youth players in the name of continuity. Please give this a read and acknowledge players do not need 100 provincial caps before they are ready to go to the national team to learn and flourish. Good luck getting through this essay, Mike Moriarty. Julie read out, Mike. I do take some of the points. The bench last week is hard to defend, but I think the notion that we're finally getting around to criticising Andy Farrell, I mean, Farrell has done just the most amazing job. Like borderline perfection. He has given loads of players opportunities and thrown them in. And you mentioned on the bench this week we have a potential debutant in Clarkson. And Sam Prendergast has been fast-tracked as well. I mentioned the likes of Osborne in South Africa. Okay, there's a little bit of loyalty to a few elder statesmen, which in particular on Friday just gone, the bench, it looked...
That was crazy.
Okay. All right, Mike. It looked a little bit, less than ideal. But I think in the main, Andy Farrell's selections have been really, really good.
No, if anything, it's like the cornerstone of his whole tenure that he's managed to identify players kind of out of sequence with their club progression. He's kind of called them a little earlier, or maybe just making different selections than the provinces are, which, it kind of stands to reason that you would trust the selection of the people that are seeing them day in, day out, but he obviously has a keen eye for this kind of stuff.
He's too loyal.
Yeah, but then I think there's some players there that, realistically should be moving on from at this stage.
No, I get that. And he'll do that, I'm sure. I think he went with all out experience, try and win the New Zealand game at all costs, maybe to a fault.
I wonder, what would you consider in the last 10 years that the step up from inter-pro level to international level has grown?
Luke Fitzgerald on the left wing this week was actually making an interesting point I hadn't heard anyone else make, which is that usually before November there'd be Champions Cup action. He felt the jump from URC to international might have been a lot for the Irish players, might have added to the ring rust.
I think so.
I'll push on, will I? Mikey, thanks for the email. I mean, it's point well made, but I just think we've got to be a little bit fairer on Farrell, who's done an extraordinary job. Column T makes a point. Hey lads, really enjoying the podcast. In particular, bits and bobs. There you go. Someone in the shop the other day said to me, I like bits and bobs,
Is that a type of biscuit, or they meant the show?
Regarding the rugby podcast, Irish podcasts have a tendency to overanalyze Ireland. In this potential... Sorry, guys. Friday night's going to be fun.
We're leaving that in.
Okay, we'll leave it in. This has basically been the story of our week behind the scenes. There have been about 4 million edits done. I'm so sorry, everyone. I feel much, much better. I feel really good. It just, the voice is kind of just still not quite there.
You're a tripper.
Okay. Sorry.
It's like Bruno Fernandes over here. He just doesn't miss a game. Like, it's unbelievable. I don't know who Mason Mount is in this analogy.
No. Okay, we'll continue to make edits because nobody needs these sounds in their ears from me for the rest of the podcast. But just assume it's happening and try and guess when it's happened. In this potential transition period for Irish rugby, maybe it would be a good time to change the rugby coverage from 90% Ireland, 10% rest of the world games to something more like 60% Ireland, 40% rest of the world. Rugby fans enjoy other Six Nations and Autumn Nations games, especially when Ireland may not be at their peak. Just my 2 cents. Lamass, column T. That's an interesting point, Colm. One I sort of tend to agree with, and yet I find myself talking about Ireland in the main. And actually for today's podcast, I've already prepped it, and it's Ireland mainly. Again, even though New Zealand play France this weekend, South Africa, England, really interesting. It rightly or wrongly, the bulk of the rugby audience in this country are basically only interested in Irish teams, is what we find. Now, you throw in a bit of Raj and La Rochelle, for sure, and a World Cup final, yeah, to a point. But in the main, it's really striking that you can see the numbers. It's so different to soccer, whereby if there's a Champions League semi-final and Real Madrid are playing Bayern Munich and PSG are playing Arsenal, and we're doing a football podcast, we would talk about them in depth. I mean, that would be the whole show. Whereas if there was a Champions Cup equivalent with 2 French sides against 2 English sides and no Ronagara involvement, honestly, we would, the appetite out there seems to be, we would spend 80% talking about whatever Irish provincial situation is going on with a quick, oh, and by the way, the 2 European games, how do you think they'll go? Rightly or wrongly, Colm, I sort of think you're right, but I do draw that distinction between a lot of rugby fans in the country and soccer fans. I think a lot of the rugby fans are just more into Ireland.
Do you remember the first week of Indosport and our heads were absolutely fried with the retention rate? We kept talking about it too much. It's like we're looking at these numbers too much. Let's step back. Let's focus on the content. But I did dip back into it this week after Monday's show, and I was looking at it with Mary, and she said, "What's happened here?" And I realised that's when you've moved off to Ireland talk.
Don't tell Joe Schmidt.
That is...
The amount of work he put in here, and these people won't even give him the time of day, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So basically, I mean, this appears, by the way, as like a graph with each podcast, and you can see a line, which you ideally want to be a straight line, because it means everybody who started listening is still listening at the end. What you don't want to see is a big cliff face.
Yeah.
So we moved off Ireland and it dropped.
Bits and bobs like a roller coaster.
Let's move on to some other things going on. We're not really going to talk about the football this evening because it will date too quickly. Ireland against Finland at home. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then I guess there's a degree of keeping eyes on Paris this evening where France play Israel. There's obviously a huge Arab population in Paris, and Amsterdam is fresh in the memories. So hopefully that is not a discussion point tomorrow. David Coote remains a discussion point. So we talked about him the other day. The video emerged of David Coote at some kind of after party, back in 2021, but the video only emerged this week. And his sins were to call a Liverpool performance SH1T, not Liverpool in general, just a Liverpool performance SH1T, and he called Klopp a C, which obviously is not ideal. And I was strongly making the argument that this should not be the end of David Coote. It's not ideal, it's very sloppy. He should absolutely apologise and come out and do what he needs to do and put it right, and maybe he's suspended from Liverpool games, but he shouldn't have his career completely destroyed. We shouldn't bow down to football fandom at its worst and most paranoid. If he had said, I've screwed Liverpool over several times and I intend to do it again, then of course that's a line in the sand. You can't cross that, you're done. And I thought he would be fine. But a video has now emerged of David Coote, as it's generally been reported, appearing to snort white powder during Euro 2024, where he was officiating, by the way. He was on VAR, France-Portugal, I think the day before. So it's like an 8-second film. He has a rolled up banknote and he's snorting this white powder. And the word seems to be that he sent it to somebody on WhatsApp.
Just bizarre.
Oh, yeah, I'd read that sentence several times over. That seems that, you know, it's the understanding, the reporting is he sent it to, I'm presuming a friend as opposed to a stranger, on WhatsApp, which was much like him talking to those people on video all those years ago. Not a good move. So I don't know. Is that like nail in the coffin now? Can you come back from that? Is that okay?
It definitely makes it harder. It makes it way easier to not bring him back. Like, whatever you think about, has he done enough to be sacked as a Premier League referee? I mean, sometimes I think his performances have been more damning than any of this stuff. Like this is the thing. Like, David Coote, in my opinion, wouldn't be any great loss. Like, he's not a great referee. I think the standard of Premier League referees isn't good, and I'm not feeding into the conspiracy theorists. But also there is a touch of that as well. Now I've been obviously gobbling up all the content, and I think it's sort of come around where it's like there's a thought that conspiracy theorists are going to take this now and run with it. But like this is a video of him, talking about a manager and calling him the C word, like you say. And obviously other referees have come back and said stuff like that. It doesn't mean that he is now, guilty of a conspiracy against Liverpool. But it does show that a current referee can be swayed by that as well. Like, he didn't make any decisions, but he obviously has a strong feeling towards a manager, and that's going to impact you. Like, we often see Premier League managers going on outbursts or running at referees or fourth officials, and you're thinking, how do you think that's going to go down? Like, it's not going to. Referees are human, and they are going to now feel something and maybe act, maybe not even consciously, but they will act accordingly then, because this is what we do. So I don't want people to see David Coote saying that and dismissing it as well as like, conspiracy theorists are going to have a field day with that. Like, of course they would. Like, there's actually footage of a referee at the highest level, or definitely the best league or biggest league in the biggest sport in the world, saying something like that on tape. Like, it's not great. No. If anything, it shows sort of that paranoia that we all have at any level of sport then, not just Premier League.
But like, you consider where the first video emanated from, and considering how old it is, the fact that it's only coming out now, you wonder was there a malice aforethought behind it coming out, or it's just bizarre timing. I would say it'd be different if he had just like done something that aggravated Liverpool at the weekend, but it was actually quite the opposite.
Yeah.
But then the subsequent stuff, that video you're alluding to today, Joe, like, was published by The Sun, and you can just imagine that all these news agencies are scouring for, you know what I mean? So like, who knows where this ends? No, I've a lot of sympathy for him. Like, I saw Henry Winter making the point, like, he's not a spectacularly talented referee. He won't be a huge loss in that regard, but he's a human being at the end of the day, and he needs some better friends, and he obviously needs help. And for the PGMOL, it's a difficult one. Like, you see what he's been subjected to in the last 48 hours, and it's indicative of broader pressure that these referees are under. It's not exactly an advertisement for the next generation. People are making the point, this isn't a good generation of referees. Do they expect it to get any better? And like, it's never been more monitored or under the microscope as it is now with VAR, and obviously players trying every which way to deceive referees. So yeah, I just think it's not. People might rejoice at someone who they're perceiving as anti their team that he's in this position, but I just think it doesn't bode well going forward.
Yeah, I feel very sorry for him, I have to say. I mean, you couldn't say what he was saying about Klopp was charming in any way. Like, the video wasn't good, obviously, but the context is important. It's late at night. He's just been egged on a little bit as well. He's playing up to them. And he's going to have his career ruined. And as for the snorting the white powder, like, I dare say there are multiple players he's refereeing on a given weekend who do similar things. And the world at large is doing similar things. So I kind of think, like, he's in his 40s? That's his career done? Yeah. You're just best of luck with the rest of your life? It just seems like...
Yeah, and if anyone, like...
really harsh.
Draw any parallel with a normal working life, and it's hard to be overly sanctimonious and think that you haven't gone home from work in a very frustrated mood and like said something about, someone you were working with that day, which is actually the case here.
Yeah.
Like, he had been officiating that Liverpool game recently, had a bad experience for whatever reason, and was venting. Like, that's a perfectly reasonable human response. He obviously didn't phrase it very well. He was particularly dumb for doing it while being recorded, but like, should you lose 30 years worth of work going forward for that. I don't know.
So is there a higher bar for referees as well? And I know it's unfair and it's unrealistic and it's like, this sort of stuff. We spoke about it on Tuesday. He's going
higher bar than who?
A higher bar than coming in and calling a manager that you've just been officiating at a game a C word. Should referees be beyond that because
they should,
because of the position that they're in?
Obviously you couldn't publicly say that, but I mean, he did it sort of privately, but got done by these charming folks who are recording him. So I think we do a bit of context. I mean, if this was an official David Coote correspondence on Jurgen Klopp, the C, then I think we'd have said, David, there's a problem here. Yeah. But he sort of got stitched up, And
I don't want to lose the context either. So I'm completely... But I do think it's a much grayer as well than like just completely feeling sympathy for him, which I do. But even if that wasn't recorded and he's saying that at a house party, then that spreads. Look,
it's not good. It's not good. And
but I just take it as read that they're all saying that stuff
that
behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So should they be though? Should that not be like a referee should have a bit more? Just keep their counsel.
Yes, they should. Ideally, yes. But we're all human.
Yeah.
But I'd say he wouldn't use any example that's not David Coote, but your standard or your maybe above average Premier League referee isn't at a house party chatting to people he doesn't know about this typically. But I would say amongst confidants and friends and family, you could be at dinner and be like, oh geez, I'd have run in with ex-manager, he's not the best, you know what I mean, in whatever phraseology you use. I'm assuming that happens on a weekly basis. How'd you get on today? Oh Jesus, that kind of thing is fine. But yeah, spouting it out to people he seemingly didn't even know is a bit unusual.
That's where it'd be more...
No, listen, no one's saying it's good. It's just whether it's unforgivable.
Yeah.
I think, by the way, it's an interesting one for managers to think about that Jurgen Klopp's getting in David Coote's face and screaming at him has sort of turned David Coote against Klopp, certainly, maybe Liverpool by extension. And the received wisdom is always that, well, you put pressure on the referees who will give you the next one. Maybe actually being nice to them might be the better tactic in the long term. Yeah. Now, Alex Ferguson definitely schooled the league to think, no, fear. That is how you deal with referees. You make them fear you. That's how you'll get decisions. But when you see David Coote kind of saying, I hate, can't stand him, you have to wonder if a bit of carrot over stick might be an option sometimes.
I think the fourth official as an entity is pointless anyway. Almost all of their jobs can be done without a human being there. Now that there's VAR, it could be a non-PGMOL official holding up the board for substitutions, and then who are the referees going to shout at then? Basically they're just a sounding board for these these managers to shout at. What value is that? Who wants that job?
Encouraging them to shout at.
Yeah, take away that sounding board and then they might behave themselves.
There's a wider point to the should you offer the carrot, because sometimes
Kevin the carrot.
This is beyond the Premier.
We got it.
This is beyond Premier League refereeing, but I think I have a thing in me, if you take it down to GA club level, where I think we need to get on top of the referee here all over his table. Yeah. That's, if being honest, and I'm not proud of it or anything, but that's the paranoia you have, and it's a very real thing that plays out.
No, it is. And if I was operating at this level, I wouldn't test out my kindness theory. I'd be like, I'm bloody giving it to him.
Yeah.
And he can say what he wants about me to a camera phone at an after party. I don't care. Paddy Talley looks to be going in as Derry manager. We'll get more thoughts, considered thoughts from you on that next week. How about that?
Sounds great.
Okay. The Guardian made news this week when they decided to leave X. They're no longer going to put their stories up on X because they call it a toxic media platform. They say it was something they were considering for some time. Far-right conspiracy theories, racism. They say the US presidential election campaign only underlined what we've considered for a long time, that X is a toxic media platform, and that its owner, Elon Musk, has been able to use its influence to shape political discourse. And so they are out, which means, and I think they have about 200 million followers across all their platforms. It means they will not tweet up any of their stories. Their journalists can continue to be on X, but they're signing off. And the sporting component, Ronan, you just sent it on to me this morning. The Bundesliga, FC St. Pauli, who are based in Hamburg, Germany's second largest city, recently promoted to the Bundesliga. They have announced they are leaving X as well. And they put up a statement since taking over Twitter, rather, as the platform was previously known. Musk has converted X into a hate machine. Racism, conspiracy theories are allowed to spread unchecked, even curated. Insults and threats are seldom sanctioned, and they're sold as freedom of speech. This is Musk's justification for everything. It's freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. And that's kind of his line. And they're not buying it. So I wonder, Guardian, FC St. Pauli, I'm seeing lots of B Sky,
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky, sorry. I signed up myself last night.
I signed up this morning.
Did you?
But then I realised, like, hang on, I got no, I'm not following anyone. I don't even know where to start. And I have to go through that whole process of finding people to follow.
I signed up to Threads a while back and instantly thought, no, I can't be doing with this.
Exactly.
So I'm stuck on X, for good or bad. That's my generation. I'm just not moving.
Our colours are nailed to the mast.
Pretty much. I like the thought of building up followers again. I just tweeting, even just saying, I've just got into the habit of tweeting. It just feels silly. Yeah. So I'm stuck.
Going down with that ship as well, yeah.
But and do you think we are going down though? Do you think this is just a moment in time, or is this the start of something?
I don't know. Like, it's going on for pre-Elon Musk. I should emphasize. There's been like a thing about Twitter that it's overly toxic and all it is arguments. Like, I've never really had that experience on there. You get the experience out of it that you want, and then like Elon Musk, that was going on for a while. His prospective purchase of Twitter, what it was then, and I kind of said, who cares? Like, if he takes over, and as it turns out, we should have cared because like it's had a critical impact on the world, and it's gonna have a irreparable, I suppose, impact on how discourse is shaped going forward. But like, it's interesting. St. Pauli would be seen as liberal, left wing kind of. They've got like they're
the guardian of the.
Don't like to use the word
world,
hipster, but like they're the hipster. They've got a hipster following beyond Hamburg. You know, they've built up that reputation. So I wonder, will this become the norm? And
I don't think it will.
No, not sure.
I think it's too established. I don't think it will. But it's interesting that a movement is certainly trying to make it happen, but I just think it's too ingrained, too established. It's still the way politicians announce things. It's still the way the majority of news organisations are just not going to turn their back on 200 million followers, for instance, as The Guardian have done. Kind of an amazing move.
Still better than LinkedIn.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, it's probably the first social media you were using on your phone, whereas obviously Facebook started with a laptop, really. And so it's really ingrained from back, like, I think I signed up in 2010 or something like that. So I've done all the legwork that I need to do. I've found people I need to follow. My, as Ronan says, the experience I get out of it now has been built over 14 years. So the thought of having to build that up again,
no, we're too tired for that.
Me and Colin only met a few weeks ago. We've known each other for years.
Exactly.
We've got a beautiful Twitter relationship, and you just want to take that away? No.
We'll touch on Gary Lineker next week. One of the things we were wondering was, so Mark Chapman is the current favourite to take over. Alex K. Jelski is being called the Hatchet Man, head of BBC Sport. He's taken over this year and is making changes. And Lineker, it seems, was open to staying at Match of the Day, believed to have offered to take a £350,000 a year pay cut, but no bueno. And he, according to one insider in the Mail, believes Lineker's name no longer carries as much weight as it once did. And he has privately admitted Match of the Day viewers would tune in no matter the host, which may well be true, I think. But there was talk of Mark Chapman and Kelly Summers sharing the job. And then the reporting was, well, Mark Chapman, if he's getting it, doesn't want to share the job. The favourites, though, are Chapman, followed by Gabby Logan, followed by Kelly Cates. Laura Wood's been mentioned as well. You were wondering, is presenting on Sky Sports bigger deal than Match of the Day? If you're Kelly Cates and you're offered it, is doing Super Sunday bigger than Match of the Day?
I think it was Matt Lawton who quote tweeted that whole, like, there was a poll that ran on the Times, like, who should take over, and he was like, I think they should go for Kelly Cates, or as if it was a fait accompli that she's offered it, she's taken it. And it made me just think, I wonder. I think, is the heft of Sky so, like, you're so visible on that Sky? I'm just thinking the 4:30 kickoff, like Super Sunday.
You're getting more viewers on BBC still.
Yeah, you are, but like
considerably more viewers.
But the profile of live sport is just different, isn't it?
I wonder. So you're getting 2 million still on the Beeb.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily about eyeballs. It's about what you're associated with. Like, essentially, it is still a highlights program at the end of the day, which there's a whole generation of people who've probably never seen a minute of Match of the Day, in its terrestrial format. And then, like, there is the argument, I know Gary Lineker's staying on for the World Cup, but like, in the long run, you are fronting the World Cup, you're fronting the Olympics.
Oh, sorry. If you get the World Cup and the
No,
Olympics,
I presume you are, like, the way, if
yeah,
it falls
yeah,
in like the way he did, it's like, probably, it'd be hard to turn it down. And she has worked for the BBC before, so no, I just thought it was an interesting one, that maybe there's a generational thing there where people would just assume our Match of the Day is the biggest gig going, but it might have changed.
would you, Colin, would you take Sky Sports Sunday presenter or Match of the Day presenter?
It's like an institution against something that feels a bit sexier, isn't it? Like, because it reminds me of Paddy Kilty taking over the Late Late Show, but it's sort of, I don't know about you, but it feels like it sort of disappeared a little bit out of, like, you know, the national conversation in a way. And you're right about the viewership, because initially I was thinking, there's more buzz around Sky Sports, and I just think that's the way the program's packaged as well, and they do a better job online.
Like, you'll have a lot fewer viewers in Sky.
Yeah, there was I think it was the start of last season, the opening weekend, they broke their record for an opening weekend, and I looked it up, and they had 5 matches on. So it was City, Burnley, Newcastle, Villa, Spurs, Brentford, Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United, Wolves on Monday. So you had games across Friday to Monday, and it was 8 million viewers, 5 matches, half the Premier League was being shown. So like, most of these games are all getting around 1 million or below viewership, you know.
Funny, you probably get more of your views on Carragher and Keane and Neville on YouTube afterwards.
Yeah.
They rack up 2-3 million sometimes. So.
And that's the thing. So it feels like you're part of a bigger buzz then with Sky Sports, and as Ronan says, it's live.
I think the Match of the Day show must be very boring to work on. Extremely boring. Because one, it's all pre-planned. Like, it's planned down to the minute because you've no time for anything else. So no conversation breaks out ever. It's really just, right, let's reheat up this pre-planned thing. Yeah. I think you do that for 25 years. Literally for 25 years, he's sat there going, well, I go to Danny on this, and then I go to Alan on this, and then we do a last quick joke about that, and it's into the next thing. Yeah,
the BBC obviously plays a huge value in it, in the sense that he's always at the top of those earnings lists, and maybe the new path that they're taking is dispelling that a little bit. Maybe they're making an about turn in that regard. But yeah, it's funny. Like, I always thought he's actually at his best when he's giving his opinion, where he seems to have to facilitate naturally enough as the host a lot. But do you remember during the Euros, it was a panel, I think it was all defenders maybe on the panel, but there was no centre forward on the thing, and they were talking about Harry Kane not getting into the game, and Mika Richards was like, Gary, you're the centre forward, what do you think? And it was the best analysis BBC did in the whole tournament. Like, he got up off his chair and he's like, you need to do this, you need to drag them out like this and run in behind. And I was like, that's...
Yeah, I feel he's very in third gear as a presenter. We don't see much of it.
No, and he's goes too far the other way in his own podcast, which has been a runaway success in fairness. But like, there's a balance to be struck there, which he probably will find, and, you know, he'll be a great loss to that show, I would say.
Yeah, well, that is the thing. I mean, the Hatchet Man, as he's been called, want to be careful with the next appointment, because that show could really just lose something if the next presenter doesn't have like an authority. It feels like a big place to be.
Yeah, well, it's good that you said that, Joe, because you went through the odds there, and I reached out to a bookmaker to get some more odds.
We're deleting this
as well. Could I get odds on Joe Malloy being the next Match of the Day presenter?
10,000?
250 to 1.
Stop. 250,000 to 1.
Just for context, Piers Morgan 100 to 1. David Moyes 60 to 1.
Sorry, I'm not having that.
David Moyes, well, he wants to be involved in Match of the Day. I don't know. He's not going to present the show.
Let's wrap this up. We've gone too long. So that was Bits and Bobs. Colin, thank you.
Thank you.
Ronan Mullen, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.